Perhaps you talk a little bit about the reactions to some of your more recent work, Rupert, on telephone and email telepathy. I believe you've got some new experiments running at the moment as well.
Yes, I've got some new ones running on the internet at the moment. Well, I mean, there's a fairly predictable set of responses to this. I mean, these are taboo topics, anything to do with telepathy, anything that suggests the mind is more than just the brain. And this came into focus in 2006 when I gave a talk along with Peter at the British Association for the Advancement of Science Annual Festival of Science.
Organised by the network.
Organised by the network. And at the press conference in the morning, it was clear that this was attracting much more attention from the media than most of the other worthy talks, some of which one could say were rather dull as part of the conference.
Yes.
And the attention that this generated, Peter talking about near-death and nearing-death experiences, my work on telephone telepathy, Deborah Delanoy's talk on reviewing work in parapsychology, generated a great deal of interest, and precisely because of that, it led to a backlash, and some science journalists who themselves are committed to a very mechanistic, dogmatically materialist point of view, fanned up a controversy by interviewing people they knew were against these things, to say it was all rubbish, and then they attacked the British Association for allowing these topics to be discussed. And this was all over the Times and a number of papers. It was a row really stirred up by journalists, but the fact is it dominated the press coverage of the entire British Association Festival of Science.
Indeed.
And
yes.
the reason for that is precisely because it's controversial, precisely because a lot of people are interested in these things, but also because a taboo had been violated on what they thought of as the kind of sacred ground of the British Association. Interestingly enough, although the Times ran 2 pages denouncing telepathy in the British Association on its science pages, the assistant editor rang me up and asked me to do a 1,000-word feature for their opinion pages, putting my point of view. They also had an editorial the very same day as this denunciation in the science pages, saying, what's all the fuss about? Everybody knows telepathy happens.
Yes.
So
yes.
the point is, as soon as you move outside the narrow world of science into the more general society, then most people take it for granted. So we have here, in the larger context, a small, embattled subculture within the world of science, to which most intellectuals feel they have to pay at least lip service.
Yes.
Because this is the Enlightenment, scientific, rational, as they see it, point of view. And people like Peter and me are not saying we're against reason and science. On the contrary, we're saying we're in favour of reason and science, and that we need more of it, not less. We just need to expand
Precisely.
the frontiers of science, rather than turning science into a kind of fundamentalist, dogmatic belief system. It's a system of inquiry, not a system of setting limits to what you can talk about.
Indeed.
I absolutely agree with you, Rupert, and I was heartened by the Times because I was also given the opportunity to have a feature in the Times, which I thought was really very nice, and clearly the editors felt that this was the scientific establishment striking at something which wasn't there at all. And if the scientific journalists now took the trouble to go along to a lot of the more advanced meetings, even in the Royal Society itself, they would see that things have changed completely. There's a very nice talk given there by Schwartz, looking at the mathematics of von Neumann and the idea that the von Neumann, what's called von Neumann 2 process, which is one in which the quantum mechanical effects occur in large objects, can take place, and was written up in the Proceedings of the Royal Society. And the argument that the authors ended with was that it's quite clear that consciousness is now outside the brain, and that mental effects affect the brain. And you were beginning to talk a little bit about telepathy between 2 people and how telepathy continued with the relationship at a distance. And this is exactly what they were saying. And one of the lovely experiments is such a simple one, and we've known it for years, and this is the placebo experiment. Give somebody a piece of chalk and tell them it is the most fantastic dopamine agonist, particularly if you have Parkinson's chemical, and then measure the way the dopamine receptors change in the brain. And you show that the dopamine goes up and it's much more powerful than some of the dopamine agonist drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is pure embedding in the cultural context.
Mm.
And once you get that sort of data coming through, you cannot argue anymore for just the play of neurons. It's got to be something much wider.